Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and this is my 1990, I always forget the year, 97 Rover 200 VI, which has been causing a few little problems here on the channel, but nothing too serious that we can't fix, I hope. If you may have seen a couple of episodes ago, it basically exploded its radiator. It had been doing so well. Almost off the roof. It had been doing so well at driving around everywhere and being a really enjoyable car, but a little bit of traffic proved to be a weak point in the radiator. That went kablungy quite dramatically, and so last episode we fitted a new radiator but found out it was still overheating because the fan wasn't cutting in. So today we need to do a couple of things. First of all, put this door back together because this is all in pieces. I was waiting for a little bit from Rover Brothers to arrive so I can take out the gaffer tape fix and put in a permanent fix of this little piece of plastic, repair the door card so at least the interior is back together again, and then figure out why the fan isn't cutting in. So I'm going to start off with the door card, so at least then I've got less stuff everywhere. Proud to be sponsored by Diamond Bright, the car care products that have been keeping the Furious fleet looking their best for a long time already. To find all you need to keep your car clean and protected, follow the link below to diamondbright.co.uk. Is the elbow of people sitting in here has pushed down and cracked this, which is a pretty thin moulding, so it's all pushed up inside or down inside. So I'm pushing it back to try and get it flat on top, and I'll put a bit of plastic on the back of this, and I've got some JB Weld in the cupboard, so I'll JB Weld this back with a bit of plastic of some kind underneath. I'll go and find something in the garage to give it some strength, and hopefully that'll be enough just to make it a bit more comfortable. Right, this doesn't need to be particularly strong, a bit of flexibility would help, so I found a bit of pretty thickish plastic packaging from something. I'm going to glue that on the back of there. So I've channeled my inner Tony Hart, cut this into approximately the right shape, going to smooge the JB Weld all over the back of that, slop it on there, and then hopefully we'll have ourselves an adequate repair. It's certainly better than it was. Right, smooge, splodge, repair. Just need to let that dry for however long it takes. Meanwhile, I will fix the window mechanism. In case you missed it on the last one, this is much easier to see with the speaker out. This here is the, or should be, the clip that holds the window glass to the winder, and it had gone spradoink and broken. So I need to first of all unglue the gaffer, which is holding it all together at the minute. And that's doing a pretty good job, it turns out. Then I can undo that 10mm bolt, remove what's left of the grip, and then put the new clip in from Rover Brothers, which arrived after a couple of days in the post. Where's my little 10mm gone? In case I haven't mentioned this in a video or two, all the tools I use are available from my Amazon affiliate store. All this good Draper stuff is there, great prices, great quality, etc, etc. And if you do click on the link down to the Amazon store, it does help the channel greatly indeed. After a couple of minutes of scratching my head and trying to work out how to get a tool in behind there to work out how to do this up, I realised that if you wind the window down to this point here, you can just put your extension bar straight on that, and it's really easy. Simple. There we go, and it is a captive nut in there, so hopefully refitting will be quite easy. Where's the new one? It is here, and as you can see, the new one has got two prongs. This one's only got the one, hence the fact it wasn't doing out. Just gotta work out how to get this thing onto the bottom of the glass now. Right, however long that took in that little segment you just watched, it took a lot longer in real life. There we go. I'm going to call that fixed, put it back together, and ignore this forever now. Now I just need to put that door card back on. This is no longer glued, so I will have to do a bit of gaffer repairs. So we have a problem which I didn't even have a few days ago, wasn't aware of, now fixed. This handle I've replaced upside down, although there are a couple of little scuff marks where it's been removed in the past. It's all horribly scabby on the bottom, so it's a little bit better this way around. This is also very horribly scabby, so I'll be hunting eBay to see if I can find another one of them to improve the look of this door at some point in the near future. So starting with the obvious, there's a fuse under here which controls the fan. That appears to be all okay. Secondly, there's another fan listed fuse in the book which says it's shared with the fog lights, weirdly, so let's check they work. So probably not that then, which means it's time to break out the P-scan. So if you haven't seen the P-scan before, this is the diagnostic thing for all the Rovers and MG Rovers and Land Rovers from the 90s up to the early noughties, and this is the Raspberry Pi which is running in it. So we'll go to, we'll try petrol engine first. I've forgotten which one this is. Okay, it wasn't MEMS 3, it was MEMS 2J. So this says, read error codes. We got ambient air temperature sensor, historic error codes for the ambient air temperature sensor, voltage, battery low, that's the historic one. So coolant temperature sensor fault. Ah, that's a new one I've not seen before. Okay, so we've got coolant temperature and ambient air temperature. Remember that, everybody. Oxygen sensor bank 1 low. Okay, so erase all of these. And then we'll start the engine up, get live data, and check for those same faults. Coolant temperature, whoops. So it's showing 21 degrees for the air intake, which is about right, it's a warm evening. Ambient air temperature, it thinks so, is minus 214 degrees centigrade. So I think we may well have found our fault with the ambient air temperature sensor. So let's go back, read error codes, ambient air temperature sensor. Also showing the oxygen sensor on bank 1 may not be relevant, depending on models, so may not be relevant here. So good news, I think we've identified our problem, the ambient air temperature sensor. Let's go and see if we can order one of those up from somewhere. So with the aid of a 19mm deep socket and an extension bar and the airbox out, it's actually quite easy to remove. Although it did come out alarmingly easily. It does say on the instructions that you're meant to put a, oops, that'd be on the floor then. It does say to install it with a light smear of some kind of sealant on it, which looks like the previous installation hadn't done. So just got a little bit of RTF on there just to seal up the end when it goes back together. This was actually surprisingly hard to locate. It's hidden quite well down the back of the engine. You don't want to over tighten this thing, just give it a little bit of a nip up. There we go. Gotta say, these little LED cob light things are fantastic as always. Now let's go find that connector, get the right way around. Naturally it's the opposite way around to how it came out. Bada bing. And there we go. Now what I'm sure you're going to say to me, which is what I should have done, was before I screwed it into the engine, what I should have done is connected up Pi-scan and just checked everything was working, but I didn't think to do that. I thought about it yesterday, I forgot today. But before I start doing any more P-scanning, I did get this in the post today. It's from Discount MG Rover Supplies, and it is a new pressure cap, genuine MG Rover item, no less. Quite nice to have that in the old X-Par packaging. Pressure cap, because these things are known to fail and cause trouble. So one more fresh new part on this car, lovely. I don't know if this got mentioned when I was visiting Paul at Project Nigel, but when I was up there, I picked up a new spare wheel from him because the one that was in this boot wasn't actually for Rover 200, so it was 4-stud, but wasn't this 4-stud. So did a quick swap. Now I've got a spare wheel that'll fit the car in case we get a puncture. So a way in which this car is better than my new Mercedes. In fact, two ways, because this has got a manual gearbox. So this car is way better than my new Mercedes. Well, a nice easy fix to begin with. I took this indoors, clipped it all back together again, and it actually looks pretty tidy. I'm just going to not use it too much, just leave it somewhere neutral in the middle and ignore it. Okay, so it still says there's an error on the ambient temperature sensor, ambient air that is. Let's try and find that in the list. Error codes, ambient air temperature sensor, saying battery voltage low. I've now changed the ambient air temperature sensor, so there shouldn't really be an error with it. Ambient air temperature sensor low depending on model. Okay, back to live data. Let's get into our coolant temperature. That's rising up happily to 62 degrees. Just see it moving up on the dashboard. Let's find ambient on here. Ambient air temperature. Yeah, ambient air temperature, it still reckons it's minus 214 degrees, which is exactly what it said before. And I've changed the thing and I've tested it, and I don't know why it would say that, unless there's a broken wire somewhere. Temperature, intake air temperature is now showing 31 degrees centigrade, which is probably about right because it's a really hot day, and that's obviously in the engine bay. Coolant temperatures reached 68 degrees centigrade. Now I'm not sure what the actual operating temperature of this engine is going to be, somewhere around 90 I guess. Quick recap. This is the old ambient air temperature sensor, which sits in the back of the intake manifold from all I can work out, and go into the bin at some point. So unless there's an identical sensor and I've replaced the wrong one, it must be a problem with either the wiring or the ECU. Here we go, so temperature is now 77 centigrade, 36 degrees centigrade on the air, on the intake manifold. Engine idling happily at 893. So much data in a P-scan. These are really useful little devices. If this gets up to 100 and it doesn't kick the fan in, then I'll know there's another problem elsewhere in the system. 92. Like a disaster movie waiting for the inevitable. Temperature gauge sitting in the middle. While we wait, let's just remind everybody the important factor that is Furious Driving mugs, t-shirts, stickers, keyrings and more are available on furiousdriving.co.uk. And if you haven't got the sizes or colours you want, then head to Redbubble, also linked in the description below. Right, 93 degrees centigrade. That's pretty warm. Still no fan. 94. Okay, now I'm starting to worry. Oh, it's dropped back down to 93. Okay. That's not helpful. Yep, that's hot. So I'm guessing the water is flowing. It is, as a few people questioned last time, a new water pump. We did the cam belt, everything was changed. Obviously you're not going to leave that kind of stuff to chance if you're doing a complete head gasket and all the rest of it. Right, it's hit 100. Fan still doing nothing. So there is an issue somewhere. Okay. Well, it's back at 91 degrees and this is reading 0 on the test meter, so that's not trying to trigger the fan. So just try disconnecting that one in case that was the wrong sensor I'd replaced, but no, that one is a feed for the temperature gauge. Just unplugged this green sensor in case, I don't know, see if it makes any difference. And I'm still getting minus 214 on the sensor. Just read a thread online that someone sent me which said that apparently it's a really common fault to see this error. Shouldn't make any difference, so maybe this is unrelated to the fan being broken and I'm just chasing up the wrong tree at the minute. Well, P-scan continues to amaze. I've just found a setting in here, well, not a setting, a reading for the radiator fan showing it is currently set to off right now. So we're going to run this temperature back up again. The engine hasn't really cooled down massively, and see if the radiator should be coming on, or if it thinks it's turning the radiator on. If not, why not? Okay, so we've got radiator fan and engine fan both signalled as off. Coolant temperature currently sitting at 95. So yeah, that's an issue, I'm going to say. read error codes. Okay, it's now showing up an error, if you can see this or not for the reflections, for the inlet air temperature sensor as well as the ambient air temperature sensor. It wasn't doing that before. Ah, I see what I've done. I've replaced the inlet air temperature sensor, not the ambient air temperature sensor. Although, reading on the forums and things, it's possible there isn't an ambient air temperature sensor on this car. So that might be like a rogue fault that I'm never going to be able to clear. So I'm chasing ghosts looking for the ambient air temperature sensor because this car might not have one. Right, okay, so I've just plugged in that green sensor again and refreshed the codes, and I've now got the ambient air temperature sensor code error still there. The error a minute ago was for the air inlet temperature sensor. But why is the fan still not turning on? Here we go, with that sensor plugged back in again, we're now showing intake air temperature at 56 degrees C, which is about right, and the ambient air temperature at minus 214, which I wonder if that's just a base thing, if there's nothing to register against, and that's why I keep getting an error. If anyone knows the answer to this, then I'll be very grateful. Well, here we go. So the car drives absolutely perfectly. And if it wasn't for the fact I'd observed the fan not working, I'd have been driving it just as normal without giving it a second thought and just wondering why it was getting very hot sometimes. As it is, as long as it's cool and the car keeps moving and not sat in traffic on a hot day, it's kind of okay to keep on using it. So I could take it on a trip somewhere and it would be absolutely fine. Yeah, problem is if I do get stuck in traffic, then I have got an issue. And I just don't know why that fan isn't cutting in. I do wonder if maybe that is why the head gasket blew in the first place, because the fan hadn't been cutting in, and so the car did overheat because of the lack of fan. That's probably why the radiator exploded, because it was already a weak point, and so once it got hot after being sort of driving fast on a dual carriageway and then stopping in traffic, that was, you know, just provoked a weak point basically, and the radiator gave way. So at least the radiator is now not a weak point anymore. The expansion cap is now done, so that's not a weak point either. So we're working through all of the potential weak points. Unfortunately, we found the next one is the fan does not trigger, and running up to 100 degrees centigrade, the P-scan shows that the car isn't trying to turn the fan on. So the question is though, what should be the thing that makes the fan come on? Because the coolant temperature, I would imagine, is the one that triggers the fan for the radiator rather than anything else. Because surely it's the coolant temperature that matters, not the ambient air temperature or any other air temperature, because the fan on the radiator is cooling down the coolant, not anything else. So if that's working, then surely that should be turning the fan on and off. I don't know. If there's someone out there who understands these things, please drop me a line, because I need to get this done. This is such a good driving car. I don't want to be limited in how I can use it, because it's brilliant. In Rover 200's brilliant, as they say. So yeah, I'm baffled and annoyed, because this is a lovely car and I want to drive it. I don't want to be forced to not drive it by some random weird electrical thing that I can't fix. Electrical gremlins are the worst. At least it's consistent though, so hopefully we're able to figure it out without too much trouble. Right, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little adventure in Rover 200 VIS. And yes, maybe next time you see this car, we'll finally know what's wrong with it and get to the bottom of its lack of fan. Okie dokie, see you again soon. Look after yourselves. Goodbye.